The optimist hopes for the best. The pessimist plans for the worst. The realist deals with whatever happens. At one time or another, I have been solidly placed in each of these boxes. With age and experience, I'm still learning to balance the three of them in equal measure. But they are rambunctious characters to wrangle. Way back in 1992, a dear friend of mine was walking her dog on a country road when a young teenage driver came speeding along, misjudged the turn, and plowed right into her, killing the dog instantly and putting Barbara into a coma. Our small group of close friends met daily to help each other wrap our heads around that shock. And one person confessed, "I don't know what to hope for. If she lives, she'll only have a third of her mind and capabilities. If she dies, she will be at peace, but her young children will grow up without her." For 3 days, we sat in limbo, on a knife's edge of not knowing what to hope for. When she died, we still weren't sure that we had each prayed in the right direction. But we moved forward with a new hope that her kids would be all right, and that we would help make sure that happened. I think that hope is a slender thread offered when I'm dangling from an abyss. It's there to keep me from total despair, to keep me hanging on with strength to deal with whatever happens next. It's there to remind me that there's always something I can do while the waiting drains my energy and the what-ifs worry my heart. So my strategy continues to be hope for the best, whatever that may be. Plan for the worst, whatever helps make me ready as possible. And then deal with whatever happens, even if my plans aren't enough and my hope was invested in the wrong outcome. Let us turn our hearts and minds toward the notion of hope and its power to help us anticipate, prepare, and learn to accept as we can humanly muster.
Besides a humble stone, a tree floats in the cemetery's air, not planted in memoriam there, but growing wild, uncultured, free. A bird comes perching there to sing winter and summer, proffering its faithful song, sad, bittersweet. That tree, that bird are you and I, you, memory, absence, me, that tide and time record. Ah, by your side to live again, undying. I, to live again. But ma petite, now nothingness cold owns my flesh. Will your love keep my memory fresh?
I will lift up my voice and sing, whatever may befall me. I will still follow the light which kindles song. I will listen to the music arising out of grief and joy alike. I will not deny my voice to the song. For in the depth of winter, song, like a bud peeping through the dry crust of earth, brings back memory and creates a new hope and anticipation of spring. Out of a world that seems barren of hope, song decries beauty in the shapes of leafless trees, lifts our eyes to distant mountain peaks which, even if we see them not, remind us that they are there, waiting, and still calling to us to come up higher. Out of the destruction of dear hopes, out of the agony of heartbreak, Song rises once more to whisper to us that even this is but the stage setting for a new beginning, and that we shall yet take the pieces of our hearts and put them together in a pattern of deeper, truer lights and shades. I will lift up my voice in song, for in singing I myself am renewed, and the darkness of night is touched by the promise of a new dawn, for the light shall come again.
Do you believe this? Do you really believe this, that there is something beyond what our eyes can see and our ears can hear? That there is something beyond our perception? Do you believe, as the choir just sang, that in the bulb there is a flower, or that in the seed there's an apple tree? I mean, I guess it's true. After all, I have seen the flower bloom and the tree yield fruit, and perhaps you have too. These natural phenomena are beautiful and exquisite examples of life's unfolding and ever-changing, fragile existence. And yet, even with flowers and fruit, even with things that we can take for granted and say things like, it's just natural, they grow, they change, it's what they do. Even so, it can be hard at times to believe, to truly believe whether this wonderful and awesome thing will really unfold, will bloom, that it will really happen and that something new will actually emerge. But just hold a seed in your palm or a newborn baby in your arms, and you cannot help but be filled with hope or with wonder and perhaps a little terror of how this life before you may grow and change. I believe collectively, this community, all of us, we try to live on the side of hope. And what we hope for is that whether it be a seed or a child or life itself, that its wonderful unfolding is toward health, wholeness, and love. But hope can be a dangerous thing. And I believe that it can be dangerous because it is a precious resource and one that is so necessary for human survival and thriving. It is precious. Hope can be like water or food for some people that can bring nourishment and energy to help them push forward and carry on. Hope can do this. And yet, because it's a precious resource, more precious and scarce at times than water on this planet, we can sometimes run low on hope. Our cup may not always runneth over. In fact, we may at times run out of hope and find ourselves or one another hopeless rather than hopeful. The question I have been wrestling with this week is not about how we minister to one another in times of abundance, during times when hope is plentiful and flowing, but instead I am wondering how we support one another in times when hope runs dry. Or in the words from Carolyn McDade's hymn, Come Sing a Song With Me, when hope is hard to find. I've been grappling with this question recently because of the very tough situation all religious communities and leaders are facing right now about how to safely do ministry in these uncertain times of this stage of the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope you received and had a chance to read the thoughtful letter that your Board of Trustees sent out this week that explains just how logistically and emotionally complicated this decision-making process is and will be for our congregation. I'm grateful for the tremendous leadership and work that has already gone into this discernment about our way forward together. But it isn't easy. It's not fun. It's painful, really, at times, to imagine more virtual gatherings through the summer and into the fall as our main source of intellectual, spiritual, and social nourishment as a congregation. And why? Well, because we like each other. We enjoy one another's company, and we like being together in person. This is a good thing. The concept of the community, though, for thousands of years, was exclusively physical in nature. And only in the last 30 years or so has the technology needed for online community even come into existence. But I have to admit, as much as online community can be life-giving and life-sustaining for people, as much as it can and does connect us, I would much rather see my parents and Holly's grandparents in person than over FaceTime or Zoom. And for that matter, I would rather we were all together right now in person. But it's just not that easy. I wish it was. Instead, we are faced with lots of questions, one of which, as I mentioned above, is how do we share our love and ministry with one another when hope is hard to find? But this question takes on deeper meaning when we recall our mission statement as a congregation. We have proclaimed that UUCCI is a community of hope and courage, where we celebrate love and work for justice. What keeps me up at night is this question: what is at stake for us as a community of hope and for our wider community when we are unable to be fully together in a time when hope is already hard to find? Hope is already hard to find. And in other words, in today's world, in the United States, in Indiana, in our regional community, hope is already diminishing with the thought of a second wave of coronavirus possibly coming this fall, with the ongoing uncertainty of the economy and job market, and with the fear, the real fear and grief that we might have not seen the last of e-learning and the accompanying stressors this puts on our families. So while all of this is happening, one of our most reliable spaces in our lives for finding hope and courage, this community, our community, is unclear about our way forward. But I want to tell you a secret, because I don't think it should be a secret. When hope is hard to find, when it is scarce and we feel like we are running on fumes, hope is likely to be right before us. Or as the saying goes, it might be right under our very noses. Go with me on this for a second. I believe that when hope is hard to find, it can sometimes feel this way because we may be looking for it, not necessarily in the wrong places, but we may just be looking too hard for it. Let me explain what I'm thinking about. Have you ever stared at something so intently that your eyes sort of just get confused and go out of focus, and all of a sudden you're not really processing anything, not really seeing anything? It's sort of like that saying, paralysis by analysis. But it can be not just physical, but emotional and spiritual as well. This happens to me sometimes, and it is a weird feeling. No, it's actually a painful feeling when I think of it. I feel like I'm out of control and that I can't even move or think or feel. Well, I believe it can be like that with hope, or specifically the lack of it. And I think this has been especially true during this unprecedented public health crisis that has turned our whole world on its head. So what if when hope is hard to find, we consider that it might not really be lost, but that it may be right here before us? that hope might be sitting right beside us or just behind us and even within us. Hope may be still with us, even now, in ways we maybe just cannot see or hear, no matter how intently we stare or how quiet we set our minds and hearts. Perhaps when we step back and soften our gaze on this world, we will see that hope is with us in forms we forgot it embodied on a daily basis. Our children, the fearless bounding of nature, the good news that comes from random acts of kindness that have skyrocketed in the past few months. If we soften our gaze, we may see what is really happening. It's like holding an apple tree seed in your palm and staring at it so intently, staring at it and wanting to see it unfold right now, wanting to witness and experience the delicious taste of its fruit. And just because that small seed is not yet a tree that bears nourishment for our lives, it still can bring us hope. And it can remind us of the power and beauty found throughout our lives in places we have forgotten to look to, and in every small, fragile seed in this world. But it's hard to believe, hard to have hope or faith or confidence when what is emerging is beyond our sight or even our imaginations. COVID-19 has stolen that confidence from us. It has taken, in a way, our innocence. Like Pandora learning of all the ills of the world, and just like Pandora, we cannot close the box once it has opened. It's too late. What's done is done, and yet the future is not yet done. So, what do we do? What are we going to do? We do what we have always done in our shared ministry together. We turn to one another and to our values for grounding. We look to our mission statement for encouragement and to remember who we are. And finally, we look before us to our end statements, to those markings on the horizon for guidance and for hope that there will not only be a tomorrow, but that there is this moment, this day, right now before us. Hope calls us forward and to realize, sort of paradoxically, it doesn't make sense, and yet it does, that both everything has changed about our lives, everything has changed, and yet at the same time, nothing has changed about our lives. Or regarding this community, it is true that our ministry looks radically different than it did 3 months ago, but it is also exactly the same. Why? Because our values, our mission, and our ends have prepared us to be one of those communities of hope and courage, a community of hope and courage that we aspire to be. The what may have changed. The where of our ministry may be different in this moment, but our true north, our how we are together has not wavered. And so for some in this congregation, they choose to sing, they choose to make joyful noise, and in their hearts and in all of our hearts, we may be filled with the understanding that we are in this together, that we may not be together in person right now, but that we are, without question, still in this together. Peggy shared profound words this morning, a prayer, really, from the late Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Robert Weston. And I need to share some of these words again in light of this reflection on hope. Weston wrote and proclaimed, "I will lift up my voice and sing whatever may befall me, I will still follow the light which kindles song." I will listen to the music arising out of grief and joy alike. I will not deny my voice to the song, for in the depth of winter, song like a bud peeping through the dry crust of earth brings back memory and creates anew the hope and anticipation of spring. And then he says this: out of a world that seems barren of hope, singing decries beauty in the shapes of leafless trees, lifts our eyes to distant mountain peaks, which even if we see them not, remind us that they are there, waiting and still calling to us to come up higher. My, my. Reverend Weston gets it right in my mind. Gone over 30 years now, and his words ring as true as ever in times when hope is hard to find, or in his words, when the world seems barren of hope. We are called to something higher, to higher ground, to the angels of our better nature, to the high road, or the road less taken. We are called to look for one another in this time that feels ironically like the cold of winter, and remember what is right before us, what is right beneath our noses. This community of hope and courage is alive and well. It's open and it's essential. And we aren't going anywhere. Because this world needs communities of hope and courage. It's not just each of us that needs it. We all need it in this world, this precious, fragile world. We need to experience hope and find ways to share it with others who are running just on fumes. The logistics, the protocols, the phases, the procedures, the cost benefits, the risks, the rewards, the timings, and all the accompanying emotions, these things will be thoughtfully considered and resolved in good time. I believe it as surely as the sun rose this morning. But let us be very clear with ourselves and one another. Hope is not gone. It may feel hard to find, but it is not gone. It may just be nestled in the corner of our hearts, afraid perhaps to emerge when so many other dangers and uncertainties try to overpower it and us. In the meantime, we will sing, and we will celebrate our children and their accomplishments. We will honor those who have died serving our country, and we will give thanks for this world that gives us life and countless invitations to remember. This community will continue to be here for you. I will continue to be here for you, even when I don't have all the answers, and I wish I did. And together we will find our way through this challenging time. As the poet Paul Verlaine describes it, memory will guide us. He writes, you, memory, absence, me, that tide and time record. Ah, by your side to live again, undying. Aye, to live again. But ma petite, now nothingness cold owns my flesh. Will your love keep my memory fresh? There is so much love in this community. I can feel it even now through this computer. I can see it in your smiling faces. Your memory remains fresh in me. Your memory remains fresh in me. And so may we each hold true to our memories as we create new ones and, with no doubt in the world, find our way back together again. May it be so, dear ones, and amen.